Hey, everybody. Welcome in to Day by Day. I'm James. I'm with Andrew, and we have a special guest today. We have Husker Mike with us. Mike, how are you doing? Welcome in. Thanks for being on the show today.
Doing great. Thanks for the invite. Appreciate you guys having me on and ready to talk a little ball here tonight.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, before we get into all that, find us on characterchronicles.com, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, all the places. Please subscribe to the show and also if you are frustrated by the transfer portal, like the show, like this episode, helps more people find us. All right, we got a lot to talk about. So we're going to get into Nebraska basketball, defensive coordinator hire for Nebraska football, portal needs. We're going to talk about Tony White. We're going to get into the transfer portal, playoff. We're even going to talk a little volleyball Final Four. I know, Mike, you said that's not your expertise. Doesn't matter. Going to ask you what you think anyway.
Appreciate it.
Again, we're glad that Mike's on the show. One of the reasons I had asked Mike to join us is because I just appreciate your Twitter. Like, you put out good stuff. You have thoughtful tweets. So I'm just glad that you could be a part of the conversation. So
do you reach out to recruits' parents though?
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah, don't do that. I'll keep that to some other people.
Mike, why don't you just tell us and listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So I was born and raised in Lincoln. Went to college at Nebraska Wesleyan, didn't go to UNL, unfortunately. So there might be some people gatekeeping me on Twitter that I can't be a Nebraska fan, but I'm going to be anyway. So I am I'm a high school teacher actually out here. My wife is from Illinois, so we moved out here about 4.5 years ago. And I love being on Twitter with you guys and just kind of interacting with other people, just because it gives me like a sense of being home, and I get to talk about the teams that I'm passionate about. And believe it or not, like in the area, I'm in the northern Chicago suburbs, so there's not actually a lot of college athletic fans out here. It's mostly a pro sports state. So all of the friends that I've made out here in Illinois are like mostly, Bears, Cubs, Blackhawks type of people. So that's kind of why I revert to Twitter if I want to talk some college football, college basketball, things like that. And especially like just talking to other Nebraska fans as well.
I love it. Well, Andrew, this is the first time we've recorded in a while because our families have had a rough month. Are you guys all healthy? You healthy?
Yeah. I think we're all healthy, and yeah, it's just been it got busy with the Christmas season, so
it did. Well, there was a lot of news, and I think, Mike, I don't know what it was that we were just DMing on Twitter back and forth, and I mentioned several weeks ago, like, oh, it'd be fun to have you on. I think you'd asked me about some Husker writing and whatnot. And then I just was like, this week, like, let's just have you on. Let's do it. There's so much stuff to talk about.
Plenty to talk about.
So let's get into it. Let's just do some kind of quick hits first. Nebraska basketball is, I feel like, an exciting team to watch this year. We were all worried when they lost Casey. They wouldn't be as fun to watch. I think they're a little more fun to watch. So, Mike, this is the question I want to start with. Who's the real Nebraska basketball? Is it the one that lost by 37 to Michigan State, or is it the one that put it to Indiana, who I think I don't know if they won tonight or they had a common opponent win tonight. I have to go back to look on Twitter for that. But who's the real Nebraska basketball to you?
That's a $1 million question right there. I'm going to be honest. Like, I think this team has at times a very low floor and a super high ceiling. And I think it's dependent on where we're playing. PBA, obviously, like everyone knows, Fred's track record at home, like his teams are really tough to beat. But then when you have those games at Michigan State, like it makes you pump the brakes a little bit. And I think this team sometimes, like under Fred's tenure, they sometimes lack, in my opinion, a little bit of competitive stamina. And I think in the Big Ten, it's tough in general. It's one of the best basketball leagues in the country. But I do feel like sometimes we don't always get like the same effort, like the effort at Creighton or the effort
Oh
at
my
home
gosh.
with Indiana. Like I think the intensity sometimes it varies. And so I was kind of thinking about this after the Indiana game. I'm like, this might be Fred's best offensive team. Like, and I
Yep.
know we had Casey last year, but
Yep.
they feel, I don't know what you guys think about that, but I'm like, they seem so much deeper and more complete. And,
Yep.
like Connor Esigian did not have a great game against Indiana. Like he was double digits, but they still won by double digits and he didn't have his best game. So
Agree.
I've loved the addition of the big guys like Andrew Morgan, Mia, all those guys. Like we didn't have that big inside presence the last few years, and like we finally have a 7-footer now, and I'm so excited about that.
I love it.
And of course, Zach Edey's gone, so like it doesn't matter anymore for that reason. But
Yep.
I don't know what you guys think about it, but like it's just hard to tell because sometimes I don't know if we get the same effort and intensity night in and night out.
Agree. So, Andrew, this is what you texted me at 9:10 on Friday night. Holy smokes. Legit team, bad outing last week, but this is who they are. So, do you still feel like is that what you think? This is who they are?
I do. I guess I can't answer no until we see it happen again. Like let's go on the road again against a pretty stout team and see what happens. But I think what surprised me the most about the other night was the fact that it was 68-67 with like 6 to go, and then they just like foot on the throat and took them all the way down. I think that's something that's
Indiana had 64 points with 9 minutes and 16 seconds left, and they scored 4 points the rest of the game.
Yeah. Like this wasn't a gimmicky win. This wasn't like and I feel like we've been trending that way kind of last year with these home wins is you've seen that where it's like they just decide, okay, it's time to put them away and they'll put them away. So
agree. Well, they play UCLA on the 4th at home.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that'll be a good indicator. UCLA is having a good year. They're ranked 18th. To your point, Mike, about the big men, what I like is we're actually not dependent on the three, even though I feel like we have good 3-point shooters. I think Andrew Morgan is finally kind of coming into his own. Like, I feel like I know what he is. Not that it matters that I know, but I feel like I know what his role is. And I think Fred is becoming okay with, hey, it's okay to shoot mid-range jumpers because you have some guys on the team that can make mid-range jumpers. And I know a few years ago, he's like, oh, it's kind of like 3 or layup. Well, Bryce is a killer from 18 to 20 feet. Even a season. So it's like, I just think getting into the paint, mid-range, you don't have to hit 14 threes to win the games anymore.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's going to benefit them down the road.
And just getting consistency out of the older guys like Juwan Gary, even Sam Hoiberg, like plays such a huge role when he gets out there, especially late in games. So if you can keep them healthy, let's keep Juwan healthy. Let's keep Bryce healthy, obviously. And once those two get rolling, it really is. Yeah, it's nice. It'd be amazing to see what it'd be like with Mast out there this year. Maybe it'd be completely different and not as formidable, but I really like what they're doing with Morgan too.
I'm super intrigued with this team, like defensively and kind of their scheme that they've put together. They seem to like put a huge emphasis on packing the paint, where they kind of bring like that backside defender and will like double team, especially when the ball gets inside. So that I think that's super encouraging against teams like Indiana, where Indiana, their guard play wasn't super strong, but they you can tell that Woodson was trying to get the ball inside. What really makes me nervous moving forward is like those teams that have like a super good shooting guard that can knock down those threes, because with that over rotation and that over helping, like it does make me a little bit nervous with those open threes. So I want to see, like, Michigan State obviously like was scoring at will, but like I want to see again against one of those tougher teams with like good shooting guards and see what it looks like if they adjust that over helping that they do, or if they continue to just stick with it and kind of kind of say like, hey, beat us with that if you're going to beat us with that type of thing.
100%. 100%. I'm trying to find out. I mean, even Michigan State, they were only 9 of 23 from range. But yeah, you get a team that could just knock them down. I mean, Creighton didn't.
Right.
They just missed. Even the few shooters that Indiana has, they just didn't hit shots. So you're just like, is that a combination of, fatigue, frustration, kind of emotional frustration, as you can't, put a run together? I think Nebraska went on several different 9-0, 6-0, 17-0 runs. And is that just great at you? But yeah, if they run into a team that can knock down those 3-pointers, it could be a rough night. Okay. Switch to football. Nebraska hired John Butler in the last, I don't know. Does anybody keep track of days in December? I don't know what day it was. Mike, I honestly don't know if we've talked on Twitter about this, so I don't know that I know what you think. What are your thoughts on John Butler as the new D coordinator at Nebraska?
Yeah, so first off, he kind of got my attention in the Chasing 3 episodes, and I think I mentioned this on Twitter a couple times, but I love his temperament. I love his demeanor. I think he's an intense guy, which for a defense, I want the players to kind of emulate that style. I also appreciated Matt Rule coming out and saying a lot of players kind of showed some support for that hire. So that tells me, I don't think that's necessarily obvious. I don't think it has an immediate correlation to success, but I think it's important that the players have his back. And I will say this, this might be a semi-hot take, but I think of all the 3 coordinators for a Matt Rule team, I think the defensive hire is the least important one. And I think that's more because of Matt Rule than it is anything else. I think Matt Rule kind of evolves his team around the defense. And I think whoever he puts in there, they're going to be successful because of it's a Matt Rule team. Does that kind of make sense where I'm coming from with that?
100%.
So I think the OC hire, which with Dana has obviously kind of started to show some progression. I think that was the most important one. But I have 100% confidence in Matt Rule's teams that they're going to play great defense because he's done that for his entire tenure throughout his career. The Panthers had great defenses under him. Yep. Adding Phil Snow as kind of that support system there, I think was really important. But I'm confident that Butler's going to do a great job, and I've liked what I've seen from the videos that they post online that he's going to put together a solid defense.
I like that. Thoughts, Andrew?
Yeah. Same thing. I think initially the one side of me, the fan that likes all this drama, it was kind of wanting that splash hire, wanting the big name. We can all get excited about their defenses and what they bring and what players they would bring. But quickly, I think it common sense hits, and it's that consistency. Hearing that the players want, we're advocating for him to stick. I think his NFL track record is huge with recruiting, and honestly, I think I kind of like the fact that both coordinators don't seem like they're going to try to be a player's best friend. They both have a little bit of an abrasive personality, and I know they both talked about trying to build relationships and recruit, but it really does feel like Rule can do a lot of that. But then who they've hired on each of those, with Addison Williams, I've heard great things about him as a relationship builder and recruiter and whatnot. And and there's a D coordinator as well. I just think there's a ton of experience in college and pros on that defensive side. And John Butler, he just seems like he brings that kind of no nonsense approach and hard nosed, and I'm excited about it.
With Snow, you're going to have 3 guys who were/are defensive coordinators.
Right.
What I find funny with the fan outrage, because that's a lot of, you guys know, a lot of what I analyze on Twitter is the fans. It's not just the X's and O's. It's I look at fan psychology, and we were all oh yeah, they're hiring John Butler. When Evan Cooper had his thing, and oh, he's probably going to be the defensive coordinator when Tony White leaves. And we all believe that Tony White is going to take a head coaching job in 2025. And then 6 months goes by, or I guess not even 6, it's 5 months since July. It happens. All of that happens. And people are like, I can't believe Matt Rule is hiring John Butler. And you're like, we were all prepared for this. Like, this is what we talked about this.
Yeah.
And we all agreed this is probably going to happen. And then it happens.
And we
so
were excited when we saw, the Bills and their defense, and he was in line to be the Bills defensive coordinator. And it's funny how things change.
Let me ask you guys a question. Oh, sorry, James, go ahead.
No, I'm go for it, because I think I know where you're going.
I want to ask you a question, you guys, kind of like a umbrella question about the coaching staff. Where, like, throw out recency bias and everything, like, where does this coaching staff overall, like, where does it land for you guys in, like, let's say the last 10, 20 years? It's just like an overall quality of coaching staff. Do you think this is one of the best coaching staffs we've had here in quite some time?
I mean, I'll say Holgerson stands out in that. I mean, offensively for sure. I really like the fact that there's not a bunch of friends, like friends to the head coach on there now. And now that there's had to be a little bit of a shakeup. So I think Rob Dvorak, is it Dvorak? Yeah, he's been, I mean, you see the development of the linebackers. That seems like a really key one to hang on to for Rule and hopefully turn into a DC someday.
That's a really good question.
It is.
I think it is one of the better staffs. Obviously, having another head coach or a former head coach on staff, I think just bumps up your grade. Him bringing an associate in, the new wide receiver coach, Shorts, not connected to Rule. So then we hire a defensive coordinator who, for everything I know, has not been connected to Rule before this year. Maybe you guys would know. I didn't think Butler had been connected to Rule. I think Matt Rule looked at who's the best defensive back coach available, and he found John Butler. And so then we bring in Williams from UCF, which is funny considering Scott Frost is going to UCF, and it's like just trading.
You wanted to keep him, I hear. So yeah,
that's good. And I know that when he was the defensive backs coach in 2023, I think like UCF either led the Big 12 in pass defense or pass efficiency defense. So I think I agree with you, Andrew. Like, what we're seeing is Rule is now finding the best guys for the job. And I think it's going to pay huge dividends for this team. I really do. And he can be a CEO. Like, he can be it. I mean, like I get it. Like, I get in organizations how, a CEO might want to get into the weeds, and you just can't. And you have to trust your, in our worlds, you have to trust your directors, you have to trust your managers, all that kind of stuff. In the coaching world, you got to trust your coordinators, you got to trust your position coaches. So you got to get the best ones that you can find. And we have a lot of money to find the best ones. So go find them. So, yeah.
I think it's a lot different because you hear thrown out recently that, this is a professional league. This is like an NFL type style. And obviously with the increase in headsets and, unlimited staff pools and stuff, that it is a lot different than the last 20 years. So, you would hope the quality has gone up as far as experience and all of that. But I don't know, what do you think, Mike? What's your thoughts on it?
I tell you what, like, as the coaching staff has kind of like developed here over the off season with the additions, like, I mean, we're hiring a power 4 defensive coordinator as a defensive backs coach who, like James said, has already shown success. Like, I forget who posted the statistics of their secondary, but like impressive numbers in the Big 12. I don't know. Like, I hope it's not me just, having some recency bias and just wanting to be optimistic. Like, I genuinely think that this is like one of the better coaching staffs collectively that we've had. And, you know, like so many people have talked about in the last 15 years, how, you know, how bad Nebraska has been with development in the football program. And I think we're going to start to see that change a little bit. At least I hope we do. Because it's never been like a bringing in talent issue with Nebraska. And I think with this coaching staff that Rule's put together, I'm pretty excited. We might not see the immediate results like next year, but I think we're going to start to see that snowball, and I hope it in the next 5 years really pays off.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of bringing in talent or the anti-development, let's talk transfer portal really quick. We'll come back to defense and Tony White. Mike, you had posed a really good question to me privately that I want to get to. So really quick for you guys, who would be your 2 or 3 biggest roster needs that Nebraska has going into the offseason? I will say today we got a punter. Okay. We got a punter. I don't know if he's that great. He's kind of, his average is somewhere around where Bushini's was, but he is a power 4 punter. Jack McAllister from Washington, so up in your neck of the woods, Andrew, and he's coming to Lincoln. So cross that off the list. We got our punter. We got our long snapper. I believe John Hull is the kicker of the future. He is the next Alex Henry, according to my wife. So your 2 to 3 biggest roster needs left coming from the portal. Mike, we'll start with you.
I think wide receiver is like the low-hanging fruit here. I mean, that's an obvious one. With adding Kentucky's wide receiver coach, like I think that helps with Dane Key especially. I don't know what his visit lineup was like and what he was scheduled to do, but he's been pretty quiet. And I know he has some like obvious SEC interests. So I'm interested to see what happens there. They seem to be in good position with Eric Rivers and Isaiah Hunter as well. So like, we'll see. I don't know how many receivers they plan on bringing in, but it seems like they've planted a lot of seeds, and hopefully I would like them to bring in at least 2. I think, I mean, the wide receiver position has been talked about ad nauseum. So we'll see what happens there. I think like my personal number 1 though would be offensive tackle. And I just saw it today, like the Nevada left tackle posted his top 3. Oregon was in that as well. And anytime Oregon's in the top 3 with you, with the NIL era, I don't feel super good about that. So we'll see what happens there. And then for me personally, I would say my second would be defensive backs. I've been pretty critical of our secondary this year. I think there were some holes there this year that I think they need to take care of. And so I've seen some, I can't remember what previous schools they're at with guys in the portal, but I know they have offered, I believe they offered a UAB safety. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I'd love to see them bring in maybe 1 corner and 1 safety just to kind of shore up the DB room as well.
That's good. Andrew?
Yeah, you always say with DBs, you look at the impact of, Sierra Wright had coming in even so late in the year, and then he's turned into probably our best corner. I was going to say DBs too. The room is full of young talent. I'm curious with some of this, the new eyes on things and new eyes on some of the personnel, if we see some people kind of rise out of that group. But I agree. Offensive tackle was one I was going to say. We have to replace Ben Hart, who's had a love-hate relationship probably with Husker fans over the years.
Yep.
And then you got young tackles that just maybe they show promise, but hey, what rules about making that jump here, that year 3 jump. And so I think a big veteran tackle is going to be key. And then I probably wouldn't have said this 2 days ago, but with the Dowdell news, I'm going to say running back. Obviously Emmett coming back is a big win. But he goes down, and who do you have? We got, again, young talent coming, but I think you want to get a back in there that can be handpicked by Holgerson and somebody to kind of come in and fit his scheme. So
Are we going to set a Nebraska record for number of freshmen who are going to play next year?
That's exciting. I mean, we'll see.
I mean, think about redshirt or not.
Yeah,
I've never thought about that.
There's going to be a lot of freshmen who play. The two positions that jumped out to me were linebacker and defensive back. I don't know if there's an importance just because of the, the few transfers out. And yeah, like, I don't know what scheme they're going to run all the time. Are they going to have 4 down linemen? Are they going to have 3? Buffalo Bills ran a 3-4 when Butler was there. James Williams was a D end, but size wise, it's like, okay, you're just kind of like a skinny linebacker. Are they going to have an outside linebacker who can do what he did? And I know they just got that transfer from Missouri, but then with Bayer transferring, that's a lot of snaps leaving. Now, again, we were 6-6. I think that you can get a linebacker just as good as Mekhi Bayer, if not better. But then defensive back, I agree with both of you guys said. I mean, like, I loved Isaac Gifford. I love his heart. He gives everything for this university. Just, talent wise, just wasn't where it needed to be. So we have to find some DBs, and then you lose Tommy Hill, who just wasn't himself once after he got injured. Like, I just feel so bad for him. He just, after he had that pick and you get plantar fasciitis, like, you're just not going to recover from that in a season. Like, that's just not an injury that goes away. I had to tell somebody that on Twitter today. Like, that just doesn't go away overnight. You don't just wake up and go, yeah, I'm going to be fine from plantar fasciitis. So getting some DBs would be really nice. But I haven't heard, and I haven't looked, to be honest with you, like, who's in the portal. I did look at running backs, Andrew. It's a lot of group of 5 guys in the portal who I think are looking for their shot.
Yep. And they got to come here knowing they're not going to be the key featured back. We have that already. And in this offense, it and that probably says, a lot about why Dowdell left. But, you got to get that compliment in there. So
they do need a guy who can score from 80 yards out.
Yeah.
I don't know if Emmett can become that.
Rules said that a lot here. Yeah. I mean, we need that guy that they can make that guy miss and go take to the house. And we just, didn't have that. Need that Maurice Washington type of. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get to this question. Here's the question Mike asked me. We saw James Williams transfer to FSU. I think that came out today, but why aren't all of the outgoing defensive transfers going to Florida State? They're transferring to other schools, LSU, Ole Miss, some others here and there. So the question is, why did Tony White really leave Nebraska? This is a loaded question, and I have a ton of thoughts, and we are not insiders. Mike, you live in Illinois. I don't think you're an insider.
I'm not insiders. Pretending to be one.
We have to give that disclaimer for people like just happen to click to 28 minutes or we're not insiders. But I think when you listen to press conferences, you can kind of read between the lines. At least I think I can. So, and Andrew, I don't think you and I have talked about this all that much. So,
no.
Mike, what are your initial thoughts? Why do you think Tony White really left Nebraska?
Man, I mean, we could spend 2 hours just talking about this question right here, probably. Ever since Tony White got to Lincoln, to me personally, and this might, I don't know, maybe other fans have different feelings about this, but I loved what Tony White did for us. I think he's a very, very good defensive coordinator, but like his tenure in Lincoln always felt transactional from like not from like a player standpoint, because you've seen a lot of players like, James Williams talked about how he was a father figure to him, like, or no, excuse me, that's Knighton, I guess. But just how these like guys
the
are,
staff,
right? How this defensive staff was so important. Like it felt like Nebraska was just kind of like a stepping stone for him. Now, where that whole story or kind of where that narrative like blows up is Tony White did not leave for a significant step up. And I guess we can, people can talk about whether Florida State is a different level than Nebraska. To me, Given like Norvell's situation in Tallahassee, it feels like a lateral move, or I mean, you could maybe argue a step down. I don't know. I might take some heat for that, but I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on it, but like when he didn't leave for that head coaching job, it definitely made me raise an eyebrow.
So did you listen to Matt Rule's press conference after I told you to?
I did catch those parts. Yeah.
Did you? So what I felt like was you could sense his frustration with the defense this year. I could. And now the thing that people are pointing out is, well, John Butler was the coach of the DBs. Yes, but he's not in charge of the scheme. The kind of the metaphor I've been using this whole last month is there needs to be one chef who makes the meal. And to me, it was, well, there's Tony White and there's John Butler and there's Matt Rule, who, as you point out earlier, is, great with defense. So I felt like it was kind of a situation where Rule was like, glad you got the FSU job. Wish you the best.
Yeah.
And I know people might hate that. I really like Tony White, but I know that in key moments and in certain games, like, let's not pretend that our defense didn't have some significant issues, even though he was great. I should say he was great. I wouldn't call him elite. I don't know if John Butler can be elite, but I don't know that he and Rule and John Butler always saw eye to eye on what to run, how to run, when to run it. And I think that probably led to some of the breakdowns, especially you heard a lot about communication. I'm like, well, if the adults aren't communicating correctly, then the players on the field aren't going to be communicating. So I'm probably reading between the lines, but I think it was probably mutual.
Yep.
In my opinion.
Yeah. And to that point of they didn't all follow him to Florida State. I don't know. You could read a lot into that. Florida State probably, I mean, everyone's got to manage their 105 now. Yep. So I'm not surprised that James Williams went. I am a little surprised like Butler didn't follow or Bayer, but yeah, did they have room for those type of guys? I think the other thing is money.
Exactly.
I mean, guys are leaving for money, and I'm sure we're going to get into that discussion, but you could also look at that other angle, that how liked was Tony White among the group. We've already heard players advocating for Butler, and
yeah, it's a good point.
More didn't follow him. So yeah, it's just, I think Rule saw maybe the fit wasn't there with Butler. And I agree. I think Rule was kind of ready to burn it all down to kind of stand on his commitment to the state and to himself and to everybody about getting this program right. So,
agree.
Yeah, like Prince Will going to Ole Miss didn't really surprise me at all with his brother being there. There was that obvious connection. I was when Butler hit the portal, like I was, for whatever reason in my head, I was convinced he was going to Florida State. And then like once he committed to LSU and I started to think about it, Brian Kelly got a ton of heat last year for not spending in the portal. And they didn't have quite the season that I think LSU fans really wanted. And it feels like they've kind of gone like overboard in the opposite direction. And I think that's honestly why Jamari Butler ended up at LSU. I think he got a bag compared to what other teams were offering him. And I don't know where Jamari Butler fits in down there. Like, do they have better edge guys than him? I would think they might. But I think like LSU is just going on a spending spree right now, because I think like, I wouldn't say Brian Kelly's on the hot seat by any means, but I think his seat's a little warm.
I agree.
After, a few years down there. So we'll see it was just interesting how all of the defense, those front seven guys kind of fell into place and where they went. And it was intriguing to me.
And isn't it crazy that 3 went to the SEC and 1 to Florida State? Like, if you look at it like just as a big picture thing, it's like we had SEC players on that on that defense. Yeah. I mean, and that's just the world of college. I think it's the one good thing that will come out of all this movement is teams are going to be more on level playing fields. So, but
agree. Wasn't it Brian Kelly and his wife that donated like $1.5 million?
Yeah.
I don't know how you get away with that. I don't know. So speaking of that, let's talk NIL and the transfer portal. I think, Mike, you had put out on Twitter, what are some rules that you'd like to see in place? I can't remember how you exactly phrased it. And I had mentioned to you that I think that'd be fun to talk about. I think there's a lot of things you could put in place, but I'm curious if you guys have given it some thought. Obviously you have, Mike, but what are some rules you'd like to see put in place to really to provide some structure? I think to provide, especially, so we talk a lot about players like, well, they're kids. Well, some of them aren't, but some of them are. So like, let's think about that. So Dylan Raiola is 19 years old. Mike, you work with high school kids. I've worked with kids. I've worked with college kids. I call them kids. Andrew, you have. Like a 19-year-old is an adult officially, but they're still really young and underdeveloped, right? And their brain's not fully developed. But then you have guys like Casey Thompson. Is Casey Thompson still in college? He might still be in college somewhere. So there's a wide range. So I don't like well, they're just kids. Oh, they're not kids. There's a range. And they're
Right.
A lot of them are very young and they're very inexperienced and they don't know how to handle money. Some of them have never had money. Some of them come from money. So then there's the whole, a coach leaves and, well, I think I can leave too. And maybe I should leave and I might not like the next coach. And so that, that's different than the money side of things, but the two are married together. And then next year we're going to have revenue sharing. So what kind of rules do you guys think should be put in place? And then I'll shut up after this, but the one that really bothers me is players transferring before they get an opportunity to play in the college football playoff because they don't feel like they have another choice. This semester starts, basically the week of the championship game for most schools in or around there. And so that one's kind of heartbreaking. I think you got guys on our team on Nebraska who are transferring. They're not going to get to play in the bowl game because they feel like they need to make the move now. So what would you guys do? It doesn't have to be all the rules, but what would be some critical cornerstone rules you think should be put in place for the for the transfer portal or NIL? Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you got to start with the calendar, I think, and it's tough. Like you mentioned there, it's tough with the academic calendar, but they have to figure out a way. I don't know if there's a way to adjust it for, make an exception for teams that are in the playoffs versus teams where if a guy opts out of the Frisco Scooters Bowl tonight, like it's not quite as big of a deal. But I think for those teams that are in the playoff, like for that Penn State quarterback that, had to put his name in the play, like that's just heartbreaking. And that's a guy too, like their backup that they were running packages with that guy, Yep. He was playing actual snaps for Penn State. Like it's a tough situation. And I get really, Tom Fornelli put out something about like, blaming the kid. I'm like, it's not, the kid didn't make the calendar. He's doing what's best for him. And it's his playing career and that he needs to do what's best for him, Yep. I think another big one, and, I'm not like they need to agree to a 2-year contract or anything like that, but maybe like they can transfer once and then after that it's a penalty. But like, I saw a graphic of TJ Finley. I forget what his last school is now. He was
North
Texas.
Yeah.
Where, was he at Texas State last year?
North Texas or Texas State, something like that.
Yeah, one of the. I mean, he's at his 5th school now, and I'm just like, this is not. I can see two schools. I can see maybe 3, but there has to be some sort of guardrails put in place where they just can. I think the bouncing after 1 year is honestly not healthy for the teams, and it's not even healthy for the players. Like I think you make them buckle down somewhere, and you try to get them to develop under a certain coach.
Yeah, agree. So Finley, he only threw for 490 yards this year. He threw for 3,400 yards last year. My gosh. Okay. So I would actually, Mike, I would be in favor of contracts with the revenue sharing model only because, typically when it comes to a job that is of significance or your salary is of significance, right? You want to make sure that there's like, you're not going to jump ship. You're not just here for the money. We're going to make you sign a contract. And that's pretty common outside of sports. And so I'm in favor of it because of that.
Yeah.
People have said, well, what about buyouts? Coaches leave, they have buyouts. Well, but do you, like, the people who say that, do you not realize like those buyouts get paid? Like someone pays that, either the school hiring the coach or the coach pays it out of his own pocket because he's making millions or whatever. So yeah, there would be buyouts, but there could be a caveat. Like not every player needs to be under contract. For the second string outside linebacker who only is probably playing 20 to 25 snaps a game, maybe your revenue share is fairly minimal. You don't need to be under a contract. You still have your scholarship. You still get to eat at the training table, full cost of attendance, all that kind of stuff. Maybe there's penalties for that if you leave. I don't know. Or maybe you have, a longer term contract because your money's actually less. I don't know. And it's like, hey, we're just giving you 4 years. And maybe for somebody who's getting paid $2 million, it's like, we're only guaranteeing you this for 1 year. We're not, so I don't know. I think when you start to deal with, 6 digits, 7 digits for some of these kids, I think it would benefit them as an adult to learn, like, nope, you're signing on the dotted line for 2 years. And after that, we're going to look at it. And if we like what you're doing and you like us, we'll renew it. If not, you're free to move in. And then I like what you said, like, yeah, there needs to be some kind of restricted free agency, because this unrestricted free agency, not just once a year, but twice a year, springtime, and then again after the bowl game, is just nonsense. It's just nonsense.
It's making me spend too much time on Twitter trying to track it all.
Way too much time. I like gave up high school recruiting and I'm like, now I have to do college recruiting.
Right.
Andrew, what do you think?
So, yeah, I agree. I think there needs to be, I am all for kids making money and, bettering.
100%.
I just feel like there also needs to be a little bit of a consequence to have somebody kind of stop and think, like, dang, do I really want to do this? Is this really what's best for me? I feel I'm a little concerned about just the quality of the college game and what that becomes, because all of a sudden the development is out the window. All of a sudden, like, building a culture is kind of out the window.
That's a great point.
And then these players are going to get to the NFL and they're not going to get to do all of this. You just change your mind after 1 year. I'm really concerned about the kind of the poaching that's going on, the tampering.
Gosh, we need tampering rules.
Yeah. And I know there's been things said, maybe Nebraska did that with a player too, but if it's allowable, do it. But there's got to be some guidelines. It's just, we can't hear every year that Raiola could make $12 million by going here, where you're like, I don't know how you build a program and you build something successful and sustainable when every year you have to figure out, like, having to rebuild that roster. So, and not only that, like, you see guys, starters for Alabama transferring, and it's kind of a sad state of things when, a guy probably works his whole life up to that point to become a starter at Alabama, and he probably left because of money, so there's got to be something in there to just kind of protect the integrity of the game a little bit. So
I also want to see a very thick black line of demarcation between revenue sharing from the school and NIL. And I know people have talked about, and I've written about, what NIL really is, and even what the legislation talks about, which people forget. Like, this is actually like codified in state law, what it should be. And so really, if you get down to it, you could probably find that all of these schools, probably even the University of Nebraska, are breaking the law at some point. I just don't see all of Nebraska's players who are getting NIL money doing NIL things, which means advertising, promotion, marketing work. You're providing a service. It's not football. And so people have said, all that needs to be, we need to know what everybody's doing. And, like that needs to be made public. I actually disagree, because a lot of those times that's private companies paying someone. I don't need to know that. Now, if a university then provides a salary and a contract for a student athlete, yeah, okay, sure. We should all know what that is. And so those really need to be distinguished, because what Patrick Mahomes does with his endorsements is his business. It's off of football time. It's his own thing. It has nothing to do with how much the Chiefs choose to pay him. So we really need to get those things straight. My one thought on the transfer portal would be for there to be one time you can transfer, and that would be after the spring.
Sure. So
that you can enroll in the summer and still get a summer before the fall. And that's probably just coming from me as a fan who thinks it sucks that guys have to miss bowl games, and then we have to miss watching them. Like, what if Drew Aller goes down in the first quarter?
Oh man,
of their playoff game.
I literally couldn't imagine. That would be so crazy.
Yeah.
Golly.
It's so crazy, even with recruiting. Like, we can get all hyped up about trying to land a 5-star, and anymore it's like, he's probably not gonna be here next year. Like, he might play one, and then I'm gonna be heartbroken because he chooses to go somewhere else. Like, it's wild. Yeah. Isn't it sad?
Yeah. I think ultimately where we're ending up with this, because ultimately I think the universities are going to want to have control over these guys. I think they're going to figure out a way to make them university employees. Yeah. I think that's unfortunately where we're going to end up at some point, because they're going to have to figure out a way. Like you said, we don't want guys walking out on these deals and stuff like that with the money, and then
Yep.
they're opting out of a bowl game or opting out of these games and things like that. So the schools are going to want to have as much control as they possibly can have, while still giving that money to the players.
So, Mike, do you think a part of that is eventually the Power 4, or at least the Power 2, breaks away from the NCAA?
I mean, it feels like we are getting closer and closer in that every year, right? Like right now, I think the foot in the door is, the SEC and Big Ten trying to get more auto bids to the,
Yep.
To the playoff. At what point, do some of these conferences just say, let's screw it. Like, let's go off and do our own thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know where we're getting at, but I think this year, like, you saw that vocal group that was saying that, the SEC didn't get enough teams in, this conference, that conference. So we'll see. Unfortunately, like, as a college football fan, I think we're going to end up there within the next 15 years, where it's going to be, like you said, the Power 4 make their own league, and then it's everybody else. But I hope we don't end up there. But like, I think as conference realignment has started to snowball, like, we've been closely getting, inching closer and closer to kind of that inevitable situation.
Isn't it interesting, though, that football is the only college sport where the NCAA has never crowned a champion? The NCAA has never done, the NCAA puts together the selection committee for basketball, men's and women's. It does for baseball. I'm sure it's similar for the other schools. I think they're a part of it when it comes to the FCS and Division 2, 3 for football. But the NCAA has never. That's why Iowa claims national titles, because they can. Because they just go, we were the champion. The NCAA didn't decide who was the champion, and so I just think it's almost like this is the logical conclusion for where college football at the highest level was headed, because the NCAA never had a foothold on football. They never have.
Yep. Money and power.
All right. Well, speaking of the transfer portal, let's shift gears. Let's talk about biggest names you want to keep from entering the transfer portal, and then we'll get to some predictions here as we wrap up. So, who's the biggest name other than Raiola that Nebraska cannot afford to have enter the transfer portal? Andrew, this is your question. I want to hear from you. I think there's only one name on the list, but I want to know if you have the same name as I do.
I posed the question, and I don't know if I have an answer. Like, I feel like we've lost a lot. I think I'll say one on each side of the ball. I think right now, like defensively, I think of like a Cam Lenhart. I think would be a big hit if he were to bounce. Offensively, I mean, Emmett already did and came back, so that doesn't count.
There's only one answer on offense. There's only one name.
Well, not right. Raiola?
No. Well, you said it can't be Raiola. So there's only one other person.
I don't even know.
Barney.
It's Barney, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Barney, right. Yeah.
It's got to be Barney.
Yeah, Barney.
Hey, I've got one a little in the weeds on offense, though.
Let's hear it.
How about Gunnar Gatula?
Ooh.
Yeah. I think he was phenomenal this year, and he is very young. I think.
Yes, he is.
I mean, we might have our left tackle / right tackle for the next 3 years. Or I don't know. He played so good this year, in my opinion. Maybe we only have him for 2 years. I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, unless somebody offers him money that he can't refuse. He's a Nebraska guy, right? Lincoln Southeast.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see him leaving, especially with the early playing time. So you just hope within the realm of rules, Nebraska takes care of him so he feels like this is my home.
For sure.
Tight end feels a little thin if Borkature doesn't come back. What do you guys think Fedoni's going to do? Like, I don't know. Is he going to stick around another year?
Well, I think Fedoni's a Husker.
I think he is.
Yeah.
So you got Fedoni, you got Carter Nelson, you still have Lindenmeyer, and then you got Harburg.
Heinrich, yeah. All right.
So I think that room's okay. On defense, mine would be Van Poppel. I think if you lost him, because he preserved a red shirt, right? So he's still got 3 or 4, I think. I don't think you could lose him. I think Cam's in, Lenhart. I think he's in. Yeah. I mean, he's preparing for the bowl game. Unless something weird happened after spring practice, I mean, he's in.
I think Van Poppel's pretty strong too. I think he retweeted something that the new line coach Braden had posted. So,
we didn't even talk about him.
Yeah,
from the Chiefs,
9-year NFL D line coach. Yeah,
golly. All right, okay. Let's get to some predictions and wrap this up. So we finally let's talk volleyball for a minute. So, Mike, you have a daughter. You're going to get into volleyball at some point. I have 2. One of them plays volleyball, not super competitively, but I've had the chance to coach the last couple of years, and I've learned a ton. And so I get into it, man. I tell you what, though, my wife cannot watch it. Like, she's like in the fetal position in the corner of the couch, just so nervous every point. And she loves the sport, but it's just so exciting. Honestly, it's great. And it's wonderful on television. It's great in person, but, so just really quick, like 90 seconds, Andrew, do you have Final Four predictions for volleyball?
Huskers. I mean, I think
Huskers
I want
by 1 million.
Yeah. I want to see Nebraska, Louisville.
Agree. I actually think Nebraska beats Penn State. I think Louisville upends Pitt, and then I'm going to say Nebraska over Louisville, who they've already beaten this year.
Yep. Storylines with Louisville's coach, former Husker, and I think we're rolling. I think they found something last game. Obviously, there was a little bit of a lull against Dayton, and then obviously sweeping Wisconsin. I see. It just feels like a special year. So
I just think they're on a mission, from last year. So, Mike, are you gonna watch the Final Four?
I will, and you know what? I did watch the Wisconsin match. I'm kind of like weirdly glad. Like, obviously, I don't have a ton of volleyball takes here, but I am weirdly glad that they played Wisconsin. Like, I think that was good to like have that Final Four intensity to a match and kind of get that battle tested type of they have that in the Big Ten obviously every year because there's a lot of good teams, but like a really tough match that kind of got that intensity, that blood flowing for him. Like, I think that's good going into the Final Four. One thing I'll add, just this is kind of off topic of the Final Four, but being a high school teacher in Illinois this week, it was the coolest thing. Like, there's been a lot of talk about volleyball, like evolving, like you kind of just talked about and alluded to. I had one of my students come up and was like telling me Nebraska volleyball players by name.
Nice.
He knew like all of them. And like Lexi Rodriguez is from a small town in like Sterling, Illinois. But like this girl, like who doesn't even play volleyball at the high school I teach at, was like naming off Nebraska volleyball players. And it was like, it almost like gave me chills. I was like, cool. This sport has evolved so much in the last, few years. And it was super cool. Like I was awesome. Like getting pumped up talking to her. So
that's awesome. Cool. I mean, I love it. Even when with my boys, so we have our oldest two are girls and then two boys. And, they like know the numbers of the players, like they would know football players. And I just think that's awesome. I didn't grow up appreciating women's sports as much. I mean, I watched some volleyball, but like when we were kids, it was just on Nebraska public television. Maybe you saw a couple matches a year. And so now it's like, no, this match was on ABC, the Final Four and the title is on ABC. Like that's
setting world record in attendance.
Yeah. So awesome. Okay. Well, let's get to college football playoff predictions. What I'm going to tell you guys is wild. I am insane. I'm not going to lie, but I want to hear, you don't have to go through every game. Maybe have you thought far enough ahead to the Final Four, and then who's your title winner? Start with Andrew. What do you got?
I think it's gonna be Texas and Oregon coming out of that side with Texas.
Wrong.
With Texas winning. And then
so you think so okay, so Texas, I'm going to pull up my bracket here so I can. Oh, and by the way, I'll just pause. A little shout out here. So if you're listening and you're on Twitter, go search BA Coaches Show on Twitter, because Ben's a big Husker fan, and he is hosting a bracket on ESPN. Just go to his profile and you can find it and you can enter. It's free. I think the winner wins like $50 or something. I don't know. It's for poor people. So go to BA Coaches Show on Twitter. So shout out Ben. He's a fan of the show. I'm a fan of his. And you can find that. And so that's my bracket. That's what I'm looking up. Okay. So Ohio State and Texas on the one side.
Oregon. I'm saying Oregon, Texas.
Oregon, Texas.
Yep. And then I'm going Georgia, and I'm gonna go Penn State. And I think we have
win it?
No, we have a national championship game of Texas Penn State.
Okay. And who's going to win it?
Texas. I don't want them to, but
man, you think Texas can do that?
I do.
Andrew's not going to like my prediction.
Dude. Okay. All right. So you think Texas is going to win it. All right. Mike, what do you got?
All right. So I actually love Notre Dame in this bracket. I dabble in the sports betting arena, and I've played some Notre Dame at like 9-1. I think honestly their route has like lined up perfectly for them. So I'm picking Notre Dame overall. I think they're going to beat Indiana Friday night. And then they're going to play Georgia with Gunnar Stockton starting his first career game at Georgia and in the playoffs. And then presumably they're playing Penn State. And if you're asking me if James Franklin is going to win a big game in the college football playoff, I'm going to tell you he's not. So I like Notre Dame to come out of the bottom. I think Oregon is the overall best team in the country. The problem is their route is pretty tough. So I think they will beat presumably Ohio State. I actually like Clemson against Oregon in the Final Four. I think Clemson beats Texas. I'm off the Quinn Ewers bandwagon. Not really thinking Arizona State is going to be a tough match. So I'm going to go Oregon, Clemson, and then Penn State, Notre Dame. and I'll take Notre Dame as the winner. I like this
Jeez.
squad this year.
So that'd be their first title since '88, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
right? '88.
I tell you what, I think they're one of the most battle-tested teams in the bracket. Like they've played a decent, I wouldn't say a tough schedule, but a decent schedule.
But Mike, Northern Illinois.
Yeah. But you know what? That was a long time ago.
It was.
Hey,
It was.
buddy. Yep.
Yeah, a lot of people reference that with Notre Dame, and it's like,
Yep.
look what they've done after that. Like I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a Xavier Watts, Omaha Burke homer here, but I mean, I like Notre Dame. I don't like that. I actually can't stand Notre Dame, but I like them in the playoff.
All right. Well, listen to my insanity. I struggled with this a lot. I struggled with it for the same reason that people struggled with, Oregon having a tougher road than, the teams at the bottom of the bracket. So into the second round, the quarterfinals, I have Clemson and Arizona State, and then Ohio State against Oregon. And at the bottom, I actually like SMU to beat Penn State for the exact reason you mentioned, Mike. I just think James Franklin chokes in the first round. Yep. And I'm not going to lie. I was really actually impressed with SMU once they got their act together against was it who were they playing the last game?
Clemson.
Was it Clemson?
Yeah.
Clemson. I really liked them on offense. And then Notre Dame and Georgia at the bottom. Getting to the semifinals, Clemson and Ohio State. I do like Ohio State beating Oregon after having lost to them once. I think that's actually an advantage for Ohio State. And then I have Boise State and Notre Dame. And then the insanity gets even worse because in the final I have Ohio State and Boise State, and I have Boise State winning. And maybe, Mike, I should put some money on Boise State. Maybe we could talk about that offline.
Hey,
we could talk a whole nother hour about how they should reformat the playoff, because what I actually just described to you guys, I don't think is as crazy as it sounds, because Boise State does have a lot easier of a road to get to that final than Oregon, or Texas, or Ohio State, who most talking heads would say, oh, they're all better than Oregon's or Boise State. But here's what I know about Boise State, and here's why I'm going to defend my pick. They have an elite running game. They play defense, and they're disciplined and well coached, and all of that travels. They're not going to light you. They're not going to light you up with their passing game and their quarterback. But man, what you need to win in January, they have. And I would be thrilled. I would be thrilled if a group of 5 school won the title.
Eric Chenander, defensive coordinator.
Eric Chenander. My gosh. Wouldn't that be amazing? So I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to stick to Boise winning. And hopefully Ashton Genty has a nice consolation prize for not winning the Heisman Trophy. We didn't even talk about the Heisman. So, all right. I think Nebraska's playing at Arrowhead. We had that in our notes. We could talk about that next time. We got a lot of time to talk about Nebraska playing at Arrowhead. Mike, you going?
You know what? I'm not. I was going to go, if they played at Lucas Oil, I was going to go because that's about 4 hours from me. I think that's going to be a Thursday night game, right? Thursday night.
It is.
Yep. Yeah. Probably won't be able to. I mean, I'd love KC, but I don't think I'm going to be able to make it. How about
Andrew?
You guys?
Cross country trek?
I've had thoughts, but yeah, we're a ways from deciding that. I'm just excited. It's like, gosh, August 28th. It's like college football in the summer starting.
I know.
It'll be wild. We'll be like first game of the season. So
yeah, I think we will be one of the first games. Last time we were the first game of the season, didn't work out too well.
No, no
onside kicks. So we'll have a lot of time to talk about that. I'm not going to go. My wife asked me about that today, and I was like, you know what? Like, there's a big TV on our wall right there, and we don't have to stay overnight in another bed at a hotel. And I know ticket prices, people were complaining about that today. So yeah, I'll watch from home. I've been to Arrowhead once. I saw Chiefs Steelers the week after 9/11. Went with my uncles, and full stadium, really cold actually, or not. Maybe it was a week. Whenever they started, it was just the next game. I don't know how long of a delay there was after 9/11, but yeah, it was just cold and it was kind of lame. And of course, I'd grown up going to Husker football games, and I was like, man, these pro games, these are boring. And that was even at a Chiefs game. So I was like, yeah, that says more about the NFL than it does about Arrowhead, but I'm sure Husker fans will love being there. So, all right. Well, we're going to wrap it up. Mike, this has been so good, man. We're going to have you back.
Yeah, for sure.
At some point.
Would love to.
This is great. Love the conversation. So much to cover. I'm sure there'll be even more news coming out next week. It just felt like we got through Thanksgiving, and man, there was a flurry. It's like every day. I'm pretty sure the just overall production for Husker fans around the country at work was just really low in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Checking Twitter, texting friends, refresh. All right. Okay. Well, Mike, thanks for joining us. Andrew, always good, man, to talk to you.
Yeah. You guys
appreciate. Yeah. Great. All right. Well, hey, everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in again. Subscribe to the show, like, share, comment. Let us know your thoughts on some of the things we chatted about today. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.